Counsell to the Cubs. Carlos Mendoza with the Mets. Stephen Vogt, another first-time manager, named manager by the Cleveland Guardians. All these coach moves, and reportedly, Craig Counsell brought in by the Cubs, 5 years, $40 million. Dan Plesac, as I like to say, that's real money. That's real money.
That is real money, right?
The highest salary ever for a manager, and by the Cubs. Steve Phillips is here. Dan Plesac is here. We're still reeling. This has just occurred. It's stunning. I didn't know the Cubs were looking for a manager, Dan.
Neither did I. And I think all three of us were like, okay, it's going to come down to the Brewers or the Mets for Craig Counsell.
Or maybe Cleveland on the outside.
Right?
You weren't even going there.
There's no way the Guardians could play in that deep water, right? My gut was telling me he's going to be the highest paid manager. He's going to stay at home and stay in Milwaukee. And then when the Mets thing didn't happen, I was like, he's going back to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
He's staying home.
Again, David Ross thought to be a good skipper. Look, there's some losing in there, but in 2020, the short year, they won their division, lost in the playoffs. This year, 83-79. Fell down a little bit toward the end, but they were having a good run. Again, just Dan, one last thing. Like, the Cubs-Brewers thing, again, you're intimately involved with this. This is not friendly territory going from the Brewers to the Cubs, right?
It's not Mets-Yankees. It's not Dodgers-Giants. But it's pretty close. And particularly, Milwaukee has kind of felt like the last 3 or 4 years, like they've had the upper hand. After 2016, the Cubs were waving the flag and kind of people 90 miles north of Milwaukee are like, hey, listen, we got a pretty good team. This, Brian, to me, is a stunner.
Yeah, all around. And I thought, too, Steve, that manager salaries left an opening for Steve Cohen. I think they're underpaid a little bit. If you have a $200 million payroll, you can pay your manager $5 million, $10 million, $15 million, right? But I didn't think it was the Cubs that would come in and blow it out. We all thought it was the Mets.
Well, we know that the Cubs paid Theo Epstein when he left Boston and went to Chicago. Rumors were he was making about $10 million then, and so they did pay. And so it was in their wheelhouse to be able to do something like this. It's a shocker, though. The fact that it stayed quiet, like knowing how these things work in baseball, the fact this didn't, leak out somewhere is shocking to me.
Yeah.
Then you've got, this is a rivalry. And so for Craig Counsell, who sort of, grew up a little bit with family in the Brewers organization, his dad around, for him now to come down to Chicago, that rivalry is a big, big move. This is a catastrophic move for the Brewers, I think. One, you lost your manager. They would have been able to handle it if you went to New York. Yeah, you got the big payday. Right. The fact that their closest competition in the division gave them the big payday is a real slap in the face to Milwaukee.
A team that they beat, like on a regular. Milwaukee's winning the division most years.
They
right?
are.
I think 3 of the last 5 full years.
And I feel bad for David Ross. I thought David Ross did a really nice job managing the team this year. He didn't have much of a bullpen. He managed to put guys in place to be able to get the job done. Their offense came on the second half of the season. They're a solid defensive team. I thought he did a nice job, but we saw the Cubs do this to Rick Renteria a few years ago when they brought in Joe Maddon.
Right.
Sort of Renteria did a pretty nice job, but it was Joe Maddon.
I felt that way, too.
David Ross did a pretty good job, but it's Craig Counsell. Not the same pedigree necessarily as Maddon.
And this was a beloved guy.
Right.
He was a beloved
He's their guy.
Grandpa Rossi.
Their guy.
I know that, who did a good job, again, by all accounts. Let's go to Joel Sherman right now. He's at the GM meetings. Joel, this all unfolding over the last few hours. Give me a broad take on what just happened.
First of all, what happened to you? You and I were together right back there not too long ago
Seemingly,
doing this show
yes.
in
Hours
Arizona.
ago,
and now you've made it to beautiful Secaucus. Look, it was felt that today was moving day in the manager search and finalizing things. There were 6 jobs open. We didn't know there was a 7th with the Cubs, and it felt that Counsell was the domino. Once Cleveland knows that they're not getting Counsell, they go to Stephen Vogt. Once the Mets know they're not getting Counsell, they go to Carlos Mendoza. And then the shock is that the Cubs decided to go with Counsell, who kind of gets everything. He clearly wanted to, when he was a player, he was very involved in the Players Association, was a big guy for players, should get what they are worth. You made this point earlier, BK, since Joe Torre was around, the manager salaries have gone down. This is a record deal, back up to $8 million, $40 million and all. So he gets the big market and the big market payday and stays in Big Ten country. He has 2 kids in the Big Ten. He has 2 daughters still in high school in Wisconsin, so he gets the locale that he prefers, because he had talked about maybe taking the year off to be around his family. He was a middle infielder. He got the double play.
Oh, well put. I just soaked that in for a second. Joe, what about the Mets? What's their take on this? Again, just to give a little background to people out there not following Mets baseball all the time, David Stearns takes a year off, ends up with New York. Craig Counsell, his contract ends. We don't know where he's going. Of course he's going to New York. How did that not happen?
Well, again, what the Mets couldn't give him, perhaps, is the locale, close to his family, close to his children. In theory, you would think that Steve Cohen could always outbid whoever he wants. But I do wonder, after he paid top dollar for the head of baseball operations and said the head of baseball operations would make this decision, did David Stearns not want to go to this kind of marketplace and set it over? And David Stearns had told us at his introductory press conference, I am open-minded, and clearly what he's doing here is picking someone he believes he can grow with in Carlos Mendoza, who's 43, who's never managed in the major leagues, who has some pedigree like a very young Buck Showalter. His roots are Yankees. He's been with the organization since 2009. He's worked in the minor leagues. He's worked in the front office. He worked in the major leagues the last 4 years as Aaron Boone's bench coach. He is what I think a lot of quote-unquote analytic front offices are looking for. He knows the analytics real well. He's collaborative. He has a great personality. But this is a big job. The Mets will probably have a payroll at about $300 million next year. They could talk about playing big picture. Trust me, their fan base is going to think they should make the playoffs. And so he walks into a place where he's going, like, I'm sure David Stearns is going to want to grow with him. But the pressure is on from day one that Carlos Mendoza knows how to manage a major league team.
Joe, one last thing, and again, Joel's going to be back for the showdown, but I just wondered, is this kind of a market correction? Because again, there were, after Joe Torre, left the Yankees, went to the Dodgers, and the ceiling was up around $5 million. It seemed like most money just keeps going up. Manager money seemed to go back down in an era of $200 or $300 million payrolls. Are we going to start to see managers who do still have a very valuable position start to get that higher money?
I think the greatest trick of the front offices, the baseball operations, is tricking these managers into making less money than they used to. It's ridiculous. These guys are the forward face of the organization. They talk to reporters twice a day for 9 months. You could say all the decisions are coming from the front office, but the front offices aren't blamed on talk radio and in the newspapers and online. The manager is. That's a big responsibility. And the fact that these guys' pay went down over time is ludicrous. These guys like Craig Counsell, who are at the top of the field, deserve top of the field money like it used to be, and maybe he has now done what he was hoping to do, which is reestablish that these people who can do this job at the top level will be paid like Joe Torre was paid 20 years ago.
Right. Well put. Joel Sherman there at the GM meetings. I almost said winter meetings, but they're enjoying the sunshine. Enjoy it, Joel. We'll see you at the showdown coming up in a few minutes. Thank you. Joel Sherman there, and he's gone. Give me something on that. The Mets not getting their man is what surprises a lot of us. The Mets playing hedge fund baseball. They got David Stearns. He'd been waiting, and we figured this is going to happen, and it didn't.
Yeah, you would assume so if you're a guy that Steve Cohen that had invested so much money into this team, and I'm sure they're going to spend this winter, that you would think you would go with David Stearns with a guy that has some managerial experience, and that guy seemed to be Craig Counsell, the fit.
His guy.
Right, his guy. Knows the league, knows the way they think. I'm sure, they've had a lot of back and forth. And so this is a shocker to me because this is a Mets team that maybe they're going to hit the rewind or reset for 2024, but I'm sure they're going to be in on the big-time free agents this winter, and you're giving that job to a first-time manager.
Yeah, and again, there's experience there. Look, and Stephen Vogt was a bench coach, and before that he was a catcher for many years. That's usually the pedigree. But I am just fascinated, Steve, just to get back to that, again, the manager in the pre-analytics age was everything, right? Rise or fall.
Right.
Managers got fired for, like, any type of team performance, no matter what the GM gave them, right? It was like, it's your fault. So they got all the credit, they got all the blame. So they were reduced to kind of upper-level management, kind of middle manager area. But that doesn't mean it's not an important job. It's a vitally important job. I'm glad to see somebody making $8 million a year managing a club because you're going to have multiple guys making $20 and $30 million a year.
Yeah, Craig Counsell's not a guy who somebody's giving him the lineup and telling him who to put in the lineup. Right, where we might have young managers where front offices have more input and they've got a young guy, they're saying, these are the options for your lineup, and they're putting it in because they want to keep their job because they haven't gotten it before. He's got credibility now, so he can go in there.
But also collaborate with, use everyone. You have an army of people working
the collaboration
on.
instead of him being controlled.
Right.
Where in some markets, I think the front office might control the collaboration for the manager. So it's a little different for him. And so I see him getting more money. I don't know if it's going to open the door up for everybody to get more. This is a huge loss for the Mets.
Yeah.
This is devastating.
Correct.
David Stearns came in. He fired Buck Showalter because he was going to bring Craig Counsell in. And to Joe's point, this wasn't them saying, I don't want to pay Craig Counsell, because they made their announcement after the rumors and speculation that Counsell was going to go somewhere else, right? Counsell made a decision that he was going to go to Chicago, inform the Mets, and the Mets then pulled the trigger on their second choice, which is Carlos Mendoza. It wasn't the other way around. They chose Mendoza, and Counsell went somewhere else. And so from the Mets' perspective, they let go of Buck Showalter. Are they better having Carlos Mendoza managing the team in 2024 or Buck Showalter managing the team? And so they made it. They took a risk. They fired Showalter because they thought they're going to get Counsell. This is a big loss for David Stearns, just starting his Mets career.
No question. Look, Buck Showalter had another year on his contract. Buck Showalter did a tremendous job in returning the Mets to legitimacy only 2 years ago.
And you know, and I know 2023 was a disappointing season. But it was a team that was hit with a lot of injuries, and Buck bought into the second half of the season, moving some high-priced guys, getting some younger talent back in. And actually, the last few weeks of the season, it was enjoyable to watch some of these young Mets players to see what they possibly could do.
Right.
And I'm with Steve. Like, I feel like if I'm a Mets fan, I'm like, wow, we let go of a guy that because we thought we were getting Craig Counsell. Now that we don't get Craig Counsell, it feels like, wow.
And even in the industry, it was Craig Counsell. But even in New York, it wasn't. Oh, boy, Craig Counsell. Well, it's not Bruce Bochy. You know what I mean? And Craig Counsell could be, he's at the kind of the better of the new manager who is the liaison for baseball ops, right? He's fluid with that. But he didn't have that reputation to blow out Buck Showalter, which is what they did.
But what he did have is he had a relationship with David Stearns.
Right.
And if you're a Mets fan, you're looking, hey, look at the great things they did in Milwaukee with the limited payroll.
Now they do it with
Now
money.
they're going to come to New York. Whoa.
Craig Counsell's a really good manager. One of the best strategists in the game.
No question.
Great manager. I think Mets fans were a little more excited to get him than I think you're giving him credit for.
Yeah,
I think they really wanted him.